started from the very beginning, kind of cover some of my background, and then up till today, pretty much. So I had to throw in some obligatory like kid pictures of me. So I've always loved organized wargaming. Always loved cool clothing with stripes, games and stuff like that since I was a kid. My background, actually, I have a degree in architecture and did architecture for a while, doing like boring drawings like that. But then one of the guys in my office had a copy of Next Gen magazine, which is kind of like an old video game magazine. There were ads in the back of that for doing video games. So I took my 3D skills from architecture and ended up working for Big Huge Games, doing real-time strategy games, and focused mostly on buildings. So using my architecture skills to kind of give me a way into video games and stuff like that. So I have a lot of experience with RTS games, and then we did some fantasy games, so some vehicles. You might see a little Rivet Wars stuff in there. I've always loved like giant killer machines with like, yeah, am I in anyone's way? Can you guys see? And so, you know, maybe that's kind of already partly maybe make it into Rivet Wars. A big grinding machine, want to do something like that.
Totally making one of those.
Yeah, cool. But for fun, you know, it also, like, I've always loved like mechs and doing mechs and stuff like that. So I just did this for fun, you know, like always interested in the history kind of aspect of like, what if, you know, there were mechs? Like a lot of guys love that stuff. Like, what if there were mechs in World War II? So this is just a piece I did. Another piece I did, kind of thinking back farther, but more like, you know, kind of like steampunk kind of thing there. Big warship kind of thing. So I worked with like tons of companies over the past 15 years. You know, Big Huge Games was like the biggest place, but working with Sony and Microsoft, and those are some of the games I worked on down there. But a lot of them are like war strategy kind of games, so I've always been into that kind of thing. And we always like played those kind of games, and my art's been of a lot of stuff, and you can see those like kind of war steampunk things kind of been there. But I was always working on projects that were like a huge team, like part of a huge team. So I decided just for fun to kind of start doing the Rivet Wars thing. It's just like something I wanted to do. So there was this like OMFG contest on this this toy site where a lot of people mod toys or make their own toys or take miniatures and make like dioramas and stuff like that. And so I drew this tank sketch for that contest, and it didn't get picked. People didn't think it was like cool enough and stuff. But I got a lot of good feedback on it. People were like, hey, this is kind of neat. And they're like, why don't you make this? Why don't you make this into your own thing? And I was like, well, I'm a video game guy, digital guy. I don't know how to do that kind of stuff. I'm like, just do it. And one guy was like, you know, you can, you know, why don't you try getting a 3D print? And then some of the guys were suggesting, hey, we can show you how to cast and pour resin and all that. And I was like, yeah, why don't I try doing this and just go for it? Because, you know, like a lot of things, you just don't try it. So, you know, what did I have to lose? Except a lot of time. So, so that was the first 3D print of like a Rivet Wars kind of thing. And this is the Vert tank, which isn't in the core box, but it's in one of the expansions. And there was just something about that where people reacted really strong to it. And what was cool was 3D quality at this time of the 3D prints. You know, the cost was reasonable, the quality was reasonable. And I already had a lot of skills in 3D because I'd been doing it for like so many years. Like it was just like easy for me to do, or, you know, a skill set I had. So, so I thought, yeah, I'll just start making some silicone molds, pouring some resin. You can see there, that was the first silicone mold I made. It was just kind of like a one piece, and then I cut it, and then kept cutting and made it into a two-piece mold, not by design. And so those pieces, you know, I put them up on the site. People were giving me cool feedback. They're like, you know, I want that. I want it in blue. I want it in red. Because a lot of those people on the site, like, they like colorways or things in different colors and stuff like that. Some people are like, this should be a miniatures game. Why don't you do this and that? And so I just started like selling them off the website, like putting them in bags, using PayPal to like buy the stuff. And like people were buying this. And like people like, you know, I sold stuff into like Singapore, Japan, like all over the world. And I was excited because like, I'm like, wow, there are 30 or 40 of my things out there in the world. You know, that's like a good scale. I could go in the basement, make like 10 or 20 of them, then like chill for a couple months, then go down into the laboratory and make some more. And but at the same time, I wanted the world to, I've always been a big fan of world building, so I want to know, like, all right, this tank, like, what world does it exist in? Like who drives it? Who, you know, it's got a gun on it, so it's probably fighting something or killing stuff, or, you know, so who's it killing? Why is it doing this? And just trying to figure out that backstory. So I did a lot more sketches, kind of fooled around with like a little guy because it was such a, like a fire plug kind of thing. I thought the guys should be fire plugs. And also I've been doing a lot more games that were more like not hardcore, kind of more like open, playful kind of styles. And I also had 2 kids, like I have 2 little boys. And it appealed to me that it was something that I could like show to my kids. And it wasn't like the other mech renders you saw earlier were a little more like realistic. You know, so if you like fought, there'd be like, you know, just a little more hardcore. I thought this was a little more friendly and could appeal to, you know, like me playing with my kids or drawing with them and stuff like that. So then the Rivet came up. So I've got these like, I've got a million books of like tanks and airplanes. You know, if you went in my library, you'd think I was just like some like war nut or something like that. But just love this stuff, love drawing this stuff. And I have this old tank book, and it's got this cross section in it of how armor used to be riveted together. If you guys saw the Kickstarter, I think I mentioned this in the video. But there's something about that shape, like it felt like a doughboy with the little helmet on the top and like this little plug body. And I was like, that's kind of cool. That's kind of neat shape. And it's got a cool story, I could tell, if I ever do a panel at it. So I kind of like did this sketch is like a little fake, like I did this after I came up with it, and I was like, but I wanted to show the progression of the thought. You know, it didn't come out like, it wasn't like, I drew a rivet, and then I did this, and then this. But that's kind of what, you know, the process I went through in my mind, like the rivet kind of becoming this like kind of plug shape and that figuring out the proportions. The rivets were also simpler at the beginning too, because I was just using this software program, 3D Studio Max, which isn't as organic for doing organic shapes. Likes to deal with like hard edges and cylinders and stuff. So that guy's like a little simpler, but there was something cool about the simplicity of it. You know, I worked for an art director. It was a really good art director back at Big Huge Games, and he used to always say it's nice to have a place for your eye to rest. You know, if everything's like detailed, it's like a little too manic. So I wanted to get that kind of like little detail here, a little place for your eye to rest, a little detail and stuff like that. So I started making some more Rivet Wars stuff. This is my studio at home. I actually work from home, and so I got you know, all my inspiration. I'm like a huge like Japanese robot fan, collector of toys from the 70s and stuff. I'm a kid. I'm like 42, so I grew up in the 70s, like with Shogun Warriors and all that kind of stuff, and Battle of the Planets, and love all that kind of stuff. But also, you know, influenced by all kinds of like walking tanks, spider tanks, things like that, and steampunk, just everything kind of. This was my my dungeon or my laboratory down in the basement with my you know, doing my silicone molds and my pressure pot. So if you guys have ever molded your own stuff, you know, you put it in the mold, you put it in a pressure pot, try to squeeze all the bubbles out and stuff. It's like a time-consuming process, and it was kind of like, you know, the Rivet War stuff started selling like pretty good, or people would be like, hey, I want more stuff, and it was hard to keep the quality of the stuff up and make enough of it, and also be like, I'm still enjoying this, and it's not me working in a factory. And, you know, it was almost my own like factory worker for me, so it wasn't that cool. You know, I painted some up, I grinded some of them. So here's some of the examples of the stuff I was selling. So I went to like New York Comic-Con, some other places, and was like selling them. So they just came with like a little stats card. At the beginning I was doing a sketch on the back of every card, but then it's like, I couldn't keep up with that. So, and then I got some exposure on websites. Toy Brick, this is the podcast of that website that really got Rivet Wars started, and some other coverage of it. But like here I said, all my time is spent in the basement mixing resin, cleaning, flashing, and mailing orders, where what I wanted to do was like be designing more Rivet Wars stuff, be doing the 3D, doing the concepts and stuff like that, not like the factory work kind of stuff that really, like, once you have that model, like anybody could come and do. I mean, there's something cool about the craft of it, but you can see this is kind of like daunting, like I had these buckets of pieces and stuff like that, and it's just like too much stuff. And this is at a, if you've seen the real game pieces are about this big, this is like the mono wheel, but when I was making it originally, it was big like this size. So these things are huge, they're like really big. There's a lot of resin, and resin smells really bad if you've ever like.
How far out of scale would they be on the board?
It's Those were at 100%, and then I scaled them down 75% to make the current scale. So they're like 25% smaller. We were joking about making like a giant Rivet Wars, like the extra large version where you could like set it up in your backyard or something like that. So that might be cool. But yeah, so I'm mailing all this stuff, cleaning off all these pieces. You know, it's cool, but not like super exciting. And then I got an email from Cool Mini or Not. And David Dowse called me. I was like, who's this guy? I'm like, I was really like, is this guy some like gaming pimp or something?
See that video in all the videos. That picture's in all of them. This is awesome.
But I was like, David was like, hey, you know, we want to carry your stuff at Cool Mini or Not. We think like, you know, war gamers would want to like be into your stuff. And I'm like, that would be really cool, but I can only make like 5 or 10 a month, so like that won't. And we talked some more, and he said, you know, we're doing Super Dungeon Explorer. We're getting more into production. How about if we handle the production, the marketing, distribution stuff? You just give us the miniatures and the game, and we'll work together, you know, like team up. I was like, that sounds really cool, but it was a little daunting, like just me by myself, like coming up with the, especially the rules side of it. Like I felt like, you know, I had like what I wanted to do as far as like the look of the stuff, but the game, yeah, I had some RTS experience, but like you need at least one other person to collaborate. So I formed my company, Super Robot Punch. If you know Shogun Warriors, yeah. They like all have a firing fist, and I was like, I'm gonna make a company and I'm gonna call it Super Robot Punch. And I don't care if people think it's silly, you know, and it's gonna have a firing fist as the logo. So I called my good friend Bill, who, yeah, I need help with game design. So Bill, he was also an artist. He's now a producer at a video game company in Manhattan, Avalanche Games, and he's really busy. But I was like, dude, I really need your help. And someone who I'd worked with for years, so I knew he's like a super sharp, really smart guy, really creative guy, really organized guy, good friends with him, so I knew we could collaborate. You know, we both respect each other's ideas, which is super important. And I knew, you know, like he said he was too busy to really like dedicate himself to it, but I was like, well, if I keep bugging you, you know, we like meet up, how about that'll work out? And you know, Kevin and I were talking about like Skype is so huge now. We figured we can meet on Skype, we could share all the documents using Google Docs and stuff like that. You know, I was doing the artwork kind of stuff, thinking up the ideas and then running them by him. And with Google Docs, we could keep a running notebook of what we were coming up with, our different ideas, different game design ideas and stuff like that. And he kind of didn't have a choice. And so I was like, whenever we hang out, I'll buy you food. Like anytime we're hanging out, like I'll treat. I'm always treating him. And he likes drinking beer, so. And he's just a great guy. So these are some early sketches of like, you know, like what was the game going to be like. So it was really like I talked to David Dowse at Cool Mini, and we were like, yeah, we want that World War I feel. We want that like pressure, that kind of like the game's moving forward, like guys are coming out. But you know, so it was like, well, let's have two sides. We don't want like just one kind of, like we want a bad guy, good guy, like Germany kind of allied kind of feel. But at first we thought, let's avoid the asymmetry thing. Let's just keep them symmetrical, because then it's like automatically balanced. You know, so, but like, what are the units going to be? So because of the RTS thing, we, you know, we're definitely into like the whole like, you know, there's got to be your infantry guy, your like tanks, your like, you know, thinking of them that way, that was like the important kind of thing. And then thinking of like what those could look like. You know, it wasn't like coming up with the cool new units isn't the hard part, but it's almost like getting them to fit in, like where are they going to fit in the game, which was kind of like the more daunting kind of part. And then like just coming up with like, okay, if these guys have a cavalry unit, what does it do, and what does that do? And at Big Huge, we worked with this designer Brian Reynolds and some other awesome designers, and they were big into like talking about like rock paper scissors. So we decided that would be like the early thing. And I don't have it, but an early diagram I did was like, let's have the Allied infantry can kill the Blight infantry. The Blight infantry can kill the Allied cavalry. The Allied cavalry can kill the Blight cavalry, and the Blight cavalry can kill the Allied infantry. So it's not rock, paper, scissors, but it's a kind of like cross rock, paper, scissory kind of thing. But just that some units are really good against others and some are really bad against others. So you kind of have to decide what, it's all about counter units, which is like a RTS kind of thing. Like okay, here come the archers, so I better not send in my heavy infantry, I better send in my cavalry to wipe out the archers. Oh, okay, he wiped out my archers with the heavy cavalry, now I have to send in my heavy infantry, which will take out the horse guys, and, you know, that kind of thing. So there was a lot of just like figuring that out, rolling out like old games that we had. We really dig like Space Hulk, so we wanted it to kind of be like that, even though it's like nothing like that. But we were telling ourselves, and like old games like BattleTech, and you know, just like old school stuff. I kind of showed this just for like old school, like Star Frontiers, Games Workshop. But we dig like Games Workshop stuff. Thing was, we didn't want the game to be like I was talking to Bill, and I told him I didn't want it to be like a points kind of thing, where you like build an army and you show up with this big army, like more like the RTS kind of spawning kind of thing. And we thought that would be like a lot more fun. This is just playing around with like different like configurations, like thinking that you wanted like different things that you would go for, like goals, which is kind of like a, you know, like a Warhammer kind of game, like oh, I got to get this thing and then I get so many points. Initially it wasn't points. It was like you got to wipe the other guy out. But then our games lasted forever, you know, so it kind of sucked. So we're like, let's just, it kind of felt like the victory point was kind of like almost like a shady out in a way to like use victory points, but it works pretty good. And here's that train thing I was telling you about. We had a big rail gun in the back, because we were like, let's just have infantry come in, and this railgun just pounds the shit out of guys and like kills them, and you just have like guys. And it was kind of cool, but it was just like, what's going on? I had no choice. But there was a lot of death and destruction. So one thing we set up was like goals we wanted, and that was like a lot of attrition. We wanted you not to get attached to your dudes, not to feel like your dudes were like this guy, if I lose him, the game's over. And it's like yeah, it sucks you lost that guy, but you could spawn him again next turn, or spawn something similar, or the game won't be over. Here's just some more stuff. This is kind of getting into the. You can see some of the rock, paper, scissors numbers there. Like, this is a 3, and this is a 3. And, you know, like, this guy's good against this guy's bad against this. This, you can kind of see the board kind of feeling more like the board that you'll see in the real game. And, oh, there, that is a really good rock, paper, scissors, isn't it? Like, that guy kills that guy, that guy kills that guy. This never happened, the giant armored spear dude. But we're thinking...
It's kind of sad, really.
It was kind of a cool idea, almost like you had this, like, melee guy. It was like really heavy, and he would like take out those kinds of things. But like it felt a little weird.
I guess he has a machine gun now.
Yeah, totally. And so this was one of the early boards that we mocked up. I've got the real one here, but this shows better. And all the little dudes. So what we do is like, you know, to proto the game and just play it a bit. So we just printed this out. Luckily, I got an 11 by 17 inch printer, so we can print big stuff. And then just all the game pieces and stuff like that, just to proto the game.
When I played on that, I didn't have an 11 by 17.
Did you really print it out?
That map was the size of a piece of paper. And those little dudes are small.
And then, yeah, so this is just us. Like, I took some pictures while we were developing it, like total, like, you know, like, hey, we could use this someday if we give a talk at a convention or something. And look what happened. So look how happy we are playing. Because that's like, the best time.
So you notice those shots never look normal. Even if it is, like it's something really going on, you look at the picture afterwards, it's like, what are they even doing?
And it's like, why is he happy when I'm rolling against him? Where you can see like the positioned, you know, the early prototype.
You're going to murder those guys.
Right. After he lost, he's probably better than me at playing the game. But then this was like trying to get all the miniatures. Like this was when we kind of had an idea like what the miniatures would be, and then looking at those, and then thinking about like logos, the two factions. Like so, starting to get the world was starting to fill out more too while we were doing the gameplay kind of stuff. And the map, the original map was just like. I was like, man, maps, when you just create them from your head, they always look bad. So I'll just take a map of like Europe and flip it, rotate it 180 degrees. But then this German guy posted it in some site in Germany, and like all the feedback's like, like, look at how cheesy this is. He just rotated the map. And I thought no one would recognize it. I jiggered it a little bit, but I didn't jigger it enough. So I was like, I'm going to go redo the map. And so I took that one, like chopped it up, so there's still like that framework of what a real map looks like, but really kind of pushed and pulled around. So, because I think it's important that even though this is like a imaginary world, like it's not real, that you still have that feel of like yeah, like here are the Allies and they're pushing into Germany, and there's the, you know, maybe someday someone will make a Ruska that'll like, you know, come in, they're pushing from this side, and it gives you a lot of like sort of bits of familiarity, like the way, you know, if I'm making a tank, like I want treads on it or like legs on it and a gun coming out and you know it's a tank. The same with like when you make the Blight, they feel like German, they feel like, you know, that you kind of relate to. The Ruska are going to be like Russian-y kind of thing. So that was the map stuff. And then here's some like some images of like the real, the good like protos being printed. I just thought I'd throw these in so you guys could see them. But they look like so gross, don't they? When they come out of it.
It's like some kind of nightmarish cave formation.
Right. Yeah. It's like I was like, those photos are upside down, but it actually like it's a flat plate and a laser goes through this the liquid, like the resin or whatever, and it where the two lasers like overlap, it like hardens the resin, and it layer by layer slowly pulls the thing out of the resin. Which is pretty neat. And they came out pretty sweet.
Yeah, they look like delicious creamsicle flavored candy.
Yeah, the color is really strange. Those are painted up by G's, an awesome job. And then like playing around with the board, one of the most important things, like David told me, like when you're mocking up the board pieces, like make sure you do them with real pieces of paper. Don't like do it in your head, because like you'll mess up that like this is on the back of here. So if you make a scenario, like you can't use both sides of the same piece of paper. So make sure you do it that way. That was a good lesson. I think this is where.
Is that the dead image?
Yeah, yeah. So there's an awesome picture like of Kevin next to a DeLorean that I was going to put in there, because like around this part of the process, like David told me like Kevin would be working on the project too, like coordinating everything and stuff like that. And so so that was really an awesome part of the game, because like Bill and I had been, you know, kind of demoing the game to our friends or showing them and like running ideas with them, but it was kind of like our own little pod, you know what I mean? It was like you kind of get that everybody's in the same mindset. And when I sent Kevin the rules for the first time, you know, it was like the first time like someone who was like a really good, like understood games, understood mechanics, knew how to critique games, was looking at it. And it was cool, because like I talked to him after he looked at them, and he was like something like, you know, like wow, there's, you know, it's not totally like broken, like there's something here, you know. It seems
congratulations, cool, your game's not crap.
Yeah. But I think you said something too, like you felt weird because you're used to like having to fix a broken thing, and you didn't feel like it was like totally like needed to be fixed. So it was really cool, because that started another phase of the game where like we had the, you know, kind of like this is working in a cool way, but there's like other hooks we want, there's things that need to be refined, there's stuff that like we were doing that like, you know, so like Kevin and his team, you know, with Mike and like getting other testers to play it, they started seeing things that we just wouldn't have seen in our own vacuum, and that was like hugely valuable. And that even came, I guess, like more apparent when you guys brought it to shows and like demoed it, and you see like the more people who play it, you know, the more stuff that comes up.
If
so
you
this was
play
like,
the demo, those are the same models.
Yeah.
And tiles.
And then, you know, thinking about like how the game's going to come together, like those were early mock-ups and some stat cards. You know, but thinking about like everything trying to be influenced by like this, like medals and World War I kind of stuff and that aesthetic. So trying to keep it all together. Is this a missing one? Oh yeah, there's a missing one. This is some of the development, like some of the icons. The first one was the icons I initially did that didn't work, and then yeah, the final icons. So there's just like tons of pieces when you're, you know, through the development, like all these things have to come up. So it's like, what's the symbol for like the lowest armor class and the highest armor class, and you know, deciding to use rivets as a sort of like way of representing like the number. So initially I had like, for some reason I had like the first one had 4 rivets and then like 6 rivets, and I was like, oh, people will get it, but like it just like was so confusing.
It's like 4, 6, 7.
It's like the Fibonacci sequence.
Well, there's no real reason to it. Because his eyes started twitching. It doesn't make sense.
It's because I drew like I was like going to draw these like cool shields, and then I'm like, oh, they should have like rivets on them, and the more rivets, like, you know. And then it was like, oh, this shape, like, you need like 7 rivets. I did make sure that it kept going up.
It did
like
go
none
up.
of them went down.
The shields all got bigger, right?
Right. They got more ornate too.
Yeah.
Like, it was like simpler to, which is kind of doing, but not. And then it was like, hey, let's come up with a cover. That was like an early cover thing with trenches, which I shouldn't have done. Just messing around with some stuff, and that'll probably be in like the art book and like from the comic book kind of things. But that's more like 3D.
The comic book's just drawn off of that, isn't it? It's
yeah.
Piece, yeah.
Yeah, because I did that, and then there's this other artist who's working on a comic book with me, and for the cover, I just went over and like did the line work, like outlining all that, and then he did all the color work behind it, so it worked out pretty good. And then this is the final cover. Super, yeah, super talented artist. He's really good, but that was pretty cool. And then it was like, hey, let's do a Kickstarter. Like, let's, you know, we got all this stuff ready. Let's see if we can use, you know, use a Kickstarter to help, like, because the project had kind of grown in scope from the original, like, let's just do so many minis. Like, it kind of got bigger, and it's like, wow, this is going to cost a lot. Kevin was talking about it earlier, like to build, you know, to get the factory to make all these pieces for this thing, it'd be a huge undertaking. And it was like, plus we, you know, we all had like these ideas of like more units we wanted to do. And it's like, well, you know, I don't know if we can do it. So, but Kickstarter gave us that chance to like try to raise the money up front and then like be able to fund all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of exciting, kind of scary, getting ready for that.
2 months of my life I'll never get back.
Yeah, that was like a rough time, but it was really cool. So like I took a screenshot when it was at like 7,000, and then it like, you know, kick tracker, it jumped to the first place for a little while, and we got some like coverage in the press. So it was awesome. And what it enabled is things like the heavy metal expansion, like these giant tanks that I was like, hey, maybe we could do that in like, you know, like a few years if like people get into it and like start getting excited about it, or maybe I'll just like do it in the basement as like some kind of just for fun kind of project. But the idea that like, you know, thousands of these will be made, it's just like, you know, thinking back to when I started off in the basement with my like little like resin setup, like doing my own stuff. It's like amazing that so many of you guys like supported this project and got into it, and it's just like, you know, as a creative person, it's like the best compliment you could get. And some cool things came out of the Kickstarter, like, hey, let's have like markers and stuff like that. That's not what they ended up looking like, but I happen to have this image, something, and then it got up to like $580,000.
It was our most successful first week Kickstarter ever until Zombies Active. Yeah. Which was insane.
That first night was insane because like all my friends and family knew I was doing this, so like they were like watching it.
280,000 the first day, I think it was. Wow.
No way, really? Wow. I just, because people are like, wow, it's gonna meet the goal, and then they're like, wow, it's way past the goal. Oh my God, it keeps going. And I was like, oh, this is crazy, because watching the numbers go up, and it felt so good knowing that like this is gonna get made. Like when it crossed that thing, it's hard to explain how it felt that like the switch had been thrown, you know, unless everybody backed out or something. But it felt like, wow, there's something here that like when I first started making the minis and put them up on the website, you know, selling them out of the bags and mailing them out of my house, I was like, yeah, you know, like I don't know if anyone's going to be interested in this, but I don't care because I want to make this. And I made it, and people were interested, and it felt so good. And this was like that times like a million, thousand, billions, or whatever. Like it just felt really good that there are a lot of people out there who are interested in this kind of game and like dig the aesthetic and dig the look. And yeah, so like after the Kickstarter, it was like, all right, we got to get this done. There's a lot more stuff than we originally planned for. So you had to contract out some stuff. You know, we had to get like all the rules and everything together. And the biggest thing for me was getting all the prints done, and then you know, I had to pack them up and send them to over to Hong Kong and stuff, to the factory. And so that's pretty much where it's at now. Another last image is missing. The image that's supposed to be there is missing. But you know, so we're here today. Like this is where we're at now. Like demoing the game. People are getting excited to play it, and you know, just can't wait till it's done in the stores and stuff. So I guess that's, what was that? That was pretty good. Like a half hour.
Yep.
So
it's like 7 minutes. Now dance.
Yeah. So that's okay. So I don't know if I could show some of the actual like pieces.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm not getting blind.
Go to sleep forever.
Yes, again.
But yeah, so one of the things that comes up is it came up in the Kickstarter. So like they look like trenches on the board, and people are like, oh, they're trenches. Why don't I get a bonus for being in the trench and stuff like that? And originally they were envisioned as, I don't know if you guys can see, like they're kind of like these duck boards. Like just like the idea was it was just going to be like a flattened kind of muddy, it's like a muddy plain. Like if you look at, I looked at a lot of reference images of World War I, and it's just like, it's just like devastated. Like, and the weird thing was there's these little puddle, everything's hitting and leaving these little craters, and it fills with the rainwater. It just becomes this like muddy land of puddles and like busted trees and stuff like that. So, but it was felt that like World War II kind of like maybe it'd be these like lower trenches, like that World War I feel. So like it would still feel like, you kind of had that trench thing. And we really wanted but still a duck board, but we really wanted there to be a terrain modifier. Because early on, we just had the battlefield just as like, it was just one kind of like just dirt, and there were no modifiers. And I was playing Advanced Wars, I don't know if anyone's played that. And it's a cool turn-based like strategy game. And like the roads and stuff in that are so important. You also have like a bonus for like if you're in the forest or something, like it's harder to hit you. But just like the idea that like, yeah, we really need to add some kind of like modifier to the terrain that'll the big reason we wanted to do it was to like kind of get because you have like such a symmetrical battlefield, you don't want everybody just like moving straight into each other. You kind of want to create like that swirling kind of like a little like offset. You kind of want to tilt everything, and what that helps do is it skews it a little bit, where like this guy's going to get here like get his infantry way quicker than like this guy going from here is going to get to there. So it kind of gave us like another like thing to twist, another thing to pull to play with like the different values and stuff in the game. Other stuff, some concepts. Here's a Russian cavalry unit, so you can see a little preview if that comes about, which would be awesome. Oh, and here's the comic book. Kind of wanted to show that. So here's some drawings. That was kind of cool just to get the flavor. It might be a lot to see. But my friend Darren Pepe is a really good artist. He worked in video games, but also as an illustrator, and really made this like awesome art. Like helped me out with this. A lot of this you'll see in the rule book, like in the cards and stuff. Like a lot of the cards, like the action cards and stuff, use this art, which was like awesome that we could use this. And he and I talked a lot about like getting that feel of like this kind of like these little dudes who like seem kind of cute, but they're like fighting for their lives. They're like, they're going to die, and they have families and stuff like that. So, at some point, I'd love to take Rivet Wars and just keep growing it and stuff like that. I mean, do you want to add anything, or just take questions, comments?
Do some Q&A stuff. See
Yeah.
If anybody's got
Any plans for an iOS game?
That would be awesome. There's been because I do games, everybody's like, why don't you do a video game of this and stuff like that. And there's been a lot of talk about it and how to do it and who should do it and that kind of thing. And a lot of it's just a matter of like time or focus or that kind of stuff. Like just really wanting to be focused on like this because this isn't like my full-time job. You know what I mean? So like I'm still busy with like work and stuff. And I have 2 kids, which is like 3 jobs. And so like let's just do this because I felt like, especially after the Kickstarter, like people show all that support and trust in your project. Like you don't want to go off and like yeah, well I got the money, so let's do this, let's do that and that. you know, let's focus on this and make it like the awesome, cool thing, and build like that cool, because this is really like, I feel like almost like the foundation for Rivet Wars. You know what I mean? Make that as like strong and as cool and stable as possible. And, you know, like, I mean, I think it'd be awesome as a game. I mean, like, yeah, it'd be like really cool. So hopefully, it'd be really cool.
Did you do the board game first just because you liked the way that the first miniature that you did ended up, or was there a specific reason that you decided board game instead of video game initially?
It was because doing the Rivet War stuff, like doing these miniatures, was kind of a reaction to doing like video games. You know, because like all my artwork, like I do like oil painting and stuff like that, and like a lot of like watercolors. If you guys saw like in some of the Kickstarter, a lot of my art's like watercolors and stuff like that. And that's kind of reaction to like most of my artwork being digital. You know, like the 3D stuff you saw up there were like done in, so it's done in like Photoshop or done in 3D Studio Max or something like that. So it's like, you can print it out, but you don't really feel it, or you can animate it and see a video of it, but it's not really there. So to 3D print these things, and like when I got that first vert tank and I was like holding it in my hand, I'm like, this is awesome. It's like, you know, really cool. It felt like a toy or like a miniature or something like that. So I think that was like, just like a real cool, like visceral experience. And I was like, I don't want this to go like, you know, it didn't even occur to me to like, okay, like this is cool now, now it should be digital, you know what I mean? It was like, how can I make more of these things? Because the initial prints were like expensive. You know, I think that initial one was maybe like $100 or something like that. So it was like, ooh, do I want to spend $100 on this? And I did, and I was like, wow, I'm so glad I spent $100 on this. But no one else is going to spend $100 to get this thing. So I'm like, how can I make more of these? You know, and that's when I was talking to the guys on the site about like resin casting and silicone and stuff like that. And it's something that like, yeah, I just get interested in stuff like figuring things out. So I'm like, yeah, I want to figure that out. I can do it. And it's not too expensive. You know, there's places like I think, were we talking about like CMoN or?
Yes.
Yeah, like, yeah, you can go to these places like it's smoothon.com. I mean, the internet's crazy because like, you know, you can research anything now. Like I want to learn to make, you know, miniatures with silicone and resin. And it's like, there's so many YouTube videos of how to do it and resources. So the board game kind of came out of making these and people just being like, wow, that should be a miniature. Because I talked to a lot of guys who are like, you know, into like painters for, this one guy on the site, like Jeremy Dale, did a lot of painting of like Warhammer stuff and things like that. He was like, man, I'd love to paint up an army of these. And he ordered some of the Stugs and stuff like that. And, you know, so it just kind of came out of that. And then too, I think when David contacted me, he saw it as like a miniature product that they could carry. And then, you know, it was like, well, I can't make that many. So it kind of came out of that. But yeah, it was like having an actual, like, tangible, physical object.
Depending on the success of this, is there any plans in the future to maybe build on it and go to maybe older times of war, more recent times of war, just to kind of expand that?
Yeah, there's like you know, we've definitely been throwing around some ideas of like what we'd want to do next. I mean, I think the proper focus is to continue with this world and not stretch ourselves too thin. You know what I mean? Like, because I worked on this game Rise of Nations, which was like a pretty big hit. And then we decided, like, instead of doing Rise of Nations 2, let's do Rise of Legends, which is like a fantasy game. And we did that. It was kind of cool, but a lot of people who liked Rise of Nations were like, what the heck? Like, I like history and tanks, and now you're showing me like dragons and steampunk stuff, and you know, I'm not buying this, and I'm upset now. And then when we talked about doing Rise of Nations 2, it was like Microsoft decided they didn't want to do it because like so much time had gone by, or for whatever reason. So I feel like I don't want that to happen with like the Rivet Wars get stretched too thin, or like hey, now we got Rivet Wars, you know, like the Roman era or something like that, which would be awesome. But I kind of want to keep it. I think adding at least a couple more factions to this would be the direction I'd like to take it first. So people feel like, hey, I got this Rivet Wars game. What you're selling next adds to that and is compatible with that and stuff like that. There's other game ideas like Bill and I were talking about with like maybe like a more hero-oriented kind of game that works similar to this and with similar pieces, but is sort of like more a co-op kind of thing. you know, which might be cool in the future. But for now, just focusing on this, the core product, and building on that, and just making awesome stuff that, like, if you got this, like, your thing will work with this, or if you get the next thing, you might want to get this too, because, like, you can combine them and they'll work together and stuff like that. But yeah, it'd be awesome to do, like, Fantasy Rivet Wars, or, you know, like
Cherry.
yeah, Ben-Hur style, like, that'd be cool.
How did you get connected with the Atomic Robo creator?
This guy.
He'll, he can answer that.
We were looking for opportunities to do some cross-promotion stuff, which we do with a lot of our Kickstarters, if you want to follow them. And I've always been a big fan of Clevenger's work. I've been looking for an opportunity to try to do some work with him. And when I look with the aesthetic of Rivet Wars, it's such an easy crossover. It's so logical. And so we just sent him some emails, and it was, if you recall, it was in like the last 2 weeks. So that whole thing got turned around literally in like, I think, 2 days.
It was really fast.
Like, I shot him an email, like, to every email thing I could find, and a thing on Twitter, and it just basically hounded the crap out of the guy for a day. And he sent me a thing back, and we sent some pictures, and he's like, that looks really awesome, we'd love to do it.
Yeah,
and
Kevin was like, get this done.
I told him to start drawing it before we even got in touch with him. So I'm like, we might draw a picture we don't use, but I would rather it be done. Then it's like, well, we tried, we got a permission, but we couldn't draw a picture in time. It would be awful.
Right. Well, and you'll notice too, this, like, of all the illustrations I did, this is the cleanest one, and it has the most care put into it, because I'm like, oh man, some other, like, awesome art creative guys are gonna look at this, and, like, I'm drawing their thing. Because, like, the other thing with Rivet Wars, like, I was always drawing my stuff, so I'm like, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be. Like, that's good enough, kind of thing.
Why's he got 3 arms? Because he's got 3 arms.
We're like, that looks a little sloppy. It's like, well, you know, that's cool. Yeah, that's a style. But with this, you know, you're showing to someone else, you know, and like Kevin told me, I was like, oh man, like that's like another level, because it's like saying, hey, will you let your baby kind of come into my, like, world, you know what I mean? And, like, this is, I want to show, like, I'm being, like, sensitive to it. And
they were super into it, and it was really cool. Like, the whole process went down. He got in touch with us and was like, we're like, so what do you guys want to do? And they're like, we just want to make a big one later. Can we have the model? We're like, done!
Yeah.
Make the thing.
It's like, we give you something we've already made, like, for that.
You just send us the file that you have to make to produce it? Yeah. Sounds good.
Did you say they tried doing that before or something?
They had worked with somebody. They had done he did I don't remember if it was for Robo or if it was somebody else, but they had done basically a cold cast painted thing in the past, and it just didn't go over well because it was too expensive. It was like
There's a figure or something that I remember.
Yeah, it was super expensive, and it just didn't go. They sold like 4 or something, so it didn't work out well. But with this, they can do it a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually been a great opportunity for us, which is part of the reason why I love doing these things, is because I would love to do more work with him. I would love to do a game around Atomic Robo in general, right, personally. And we might do that now, so I don't know.
Do an expansion for Rivet Wars, even, that'd be cool.
That'd be cool too. So, you know, and he was actually of the 6 people we chased down, and I know all of these people. Like, I've been in the industry a long time, I know a lot of people. You know, we wanted to do a thing with him, we wanted to do a thing with Penny Arcade, but they were at a show that weekend. Wasn't going to happen. We wanted to do a thing with Phil and Kaya Folio to do things for them. And they were in Spain on vacation for the whole duration of the project. So, you know, that stuff didn't happen. And so we reach out to all these people to try to do this stuff as much as we can, because I think that cross-promotion stuff's a super fun thing to do with Kickstarter. It's just cool. And, you know, we get the ones that we get. Castle Crashers, that would be cool too. So I guys down.
Yeah.
Question about some of the unlicensed add-ons, the Man in Black, Baby Doll, that sort of thing. Like, how does that come about? And those are the exclusives, right? The Kickstarter exclusives. You don't end up selling those as regular things. Is that just how it works?
They're purely a promotional item.
So that's how that's allowable.
So basically, well, it's allowable because it's parody.
Okay.
You know, like, it's just what it is, right? As long as we don't call it what it is and it isn't literally what it is, right, then it's fine. You know, if we took a picture of somebody and said their name, and like, this is that character, and that's what it's going to be. So if you see Kickstarters and people post a thing up, there was one recently that did this where they were making a Firefly parody thing, and they were like, totally not the firefly clue. I'm like, you're gonna get sued because that's not clever. You're not being clever. You're being, I'd like to get sued. Like, stop that. If you're gonna do parody, you do parody and you stare somebody in the face. You say, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like this, no, that's El Cholo. I said, what did you call him? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's the thing. Like, because you're doing parody. You're not really doing the thing. So you just do. And I don't think we've had any problems. We might have had an email from somebody who was grumpy about something. I know we've changed some things with Zombie Side. We changed a couple of the things in production because when we looked at the sculpts, we were worried that there was too much similarity. So we pushed it a little bit farther and things like that. You know, it's just, you make sure you stay away from that line because you want to have fun with it, and parody is 100% legit all the time. And but you don't want to destroy your product because you crossed the wrong line with the wrong person, you know. So, and I mean, making those things is a trick because with a lot of Rivet Wars, particularly, like, where do you go to for some kind of like pop culture reference for World War I?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some of them were like historical, like, you know, the Rosie the Riveter kind of thing was like, you know, like a famous
which
kind
is
of icon.
Hilarious because it was one of the last ones we came up with.
Yeah. It was like, why haven't we done that? It's like, let's do it. Like,
yeah, that's a good point. Let me just write that down.
The other stuff?
How much time goes into modeling, just like for instance, like the model, the 3D model?
Everything's like a little different. Like sometimes when I sit down to model it, I like know exactly what it's going to be, so I can like blow it out kind of quickly. Some of them I will reuse pieces. Don't do that too much, but sometimes I'll do that. But I don't know. I don't keep track of time because I do this like sometimes I'll just be like working at night. You know, be like, I'm gonna go to bed. Like this is almost done, or how much more can I get done? But you know, it takes. I don't know, like man-hour wise. I guess like 10, 20 hours, something like that. Like a decent. It would take like maybe 2 to 3 days to do this. And then the more like the guys, the more organic stuff, like the faces and stuff, are done in ZBrush, which is more like a sculpting kind of thing. So those take like another day or two, depending.
Have you done work with anyone else besides any other figures besides the Rivet Wars?
Oh, like miniatures for animals? No. This is it. Yeah. I mean, I've done like in-game stuff, but for other games and stuff like that, but never stuff that was like printed out and made into miniatures.
Well, it's a very different process doing a 3D model for print than doing a 3D model for a game too.
Yep.
There's a lot of things you can get away with doing a model that's digital that you can't do when you're doing a 3D design for something that's going to be printed because well, it's real. It has to actually physically be there. So
one thing I use for reference is the size of the rivets. I try to keep them, they're like 0.5 millimeters or something like that. Like whenever I lay down a rivet, like that's my sense of scale because like I read someone did a write-up like they were more like a traditional sculptor and they were saying how they see all these digital people like they'll put all this detail in them when you print it out. It's too small or it's too big or it just doesn't feel right like in your hand. That's another reason I like these like cheap kind of prints, just to like be like, yeah, that feels right, or that feels too big, too small. But having something like the size of the rivets, or something that's like your scale kind of factor. So it's like, whoa, a rivet's that big, like, you know, if I know a rivet's that big and I start like detailing something, then put down a rivet at that scale, and it's huge, I'm like, whoa, I'm working in the wrong detail level. Like I gotta zoom out and start working, like thinking of that as a rivet, and I can kind of look at my model and be like, wow, so I've been working in that little area, putting all that detail in, like, that's wrong. So kind of laying those out, like it seems kind of weird, but like if I lay out some rivets on like one of these things, then I can kind of get a sense of like, okay, I should be looking at this thing at like this level and rendering it out at that level to kind of get a sense of like what it would feel like in my hand, you know, not like under a microscope kind of thing. And then that little detail will get lost and not be worth it.
it's one of the things that we struggle with. We've started using a lot of 3D sculptors, and I did a little bit of the art direction for that, being a completely untalented artist. Of course, I'm an art director. It's one of the things that 3D sculptors struggle with the most, which is one of the advantages I think Rivet Wars has, is it's not anatomically correct.
Yep. Right?
So the scale is, you don't have to worry about, when you do a 3D model on the screen and you do it correctly, if you take that model and you make it into a miniature directly, it'll look wrong when you make it in a miniature. It's just small, but you lose a lot of the points of focus, you lose a lot of detail that makes it look right to you, and it starts to get towards the uncanny valley, and things get weird. You know, like, I don't understand, why is her head so small? It's the right size, and you can prove it. You're like, no, it is the right size, like, look. But the problem is when you do miniatures, the heads, aspects of it have to be slightly wrong to make it look like it right at that size. And 3D modelers aren't used to doing that because they're making something correctly, which is an advantage that miniature sculptors have in the physical medium because they always built it that way. And they're doing it physically in their hand. They see it at the size it's really going to be, right? So they know what it's going to look like because they're holding it. It makes it a lot easier.
One huge advantage, which we were just talking about, is like this, that like, I made this mono wheel and I could just shrink it down.
Yeah.
Whereas if I sculpted this out of like, however I made it, and we wanted to make it this small, it'd be like, okay, I gotta go make another one of these. Oh
There's processes you could do to do that,
Yeah.
but that wouldn't work out.
Yeah.
Not that far. You could maybe get 3 or 4% down, but not 25% down.
Yeah, I was talking to like, I guess sometimes they'll do like a 3-to-1 and they'll use that
Yeah.
like mechanically like bring it down and stuff like that.
They can do stuff like that, but it's
But
not.
scaling it in the computer is like so much.
Yeah,
you know.
there's so many huge advantages to doing digital work. Like, and the digital sculptors are getting closer. I mean, like our stuff, the guys that do the models for us now are great. And the stuff is phenomenal. More and more we're talking about it today because they want to do work. And I think a lot of it's because of what you were saying. Is that it's the idea that I'm going to make this thing and somebody's going to hold it. It's going to be real when I'm done with it. Because it's very different from what the environment
A
normally
lot of the
is.
guys who worked on Rivet Wars, because after the Kickstarter, there were, like I pretty much did all the stuff in the core box when we were first starting, but then the expansions added so much stuff and we wanted to get done so quickly, there was just no way I was going to be able to do it and work on the other stuff. So I contacted a lot of my friends who work in the games industry as like, you know, like character modelers and stuff like that, or just general artists, and I was like, hey, do you want to do some contract work on Rivet Wars and like do this? And they were really excited to like have their work like be a physical object and, you know, just have that experience kind of, because it's something that's like really new. So you can almost like tap into a whole nother resource of like talented sculptors who, you know, aren't used to having their physical kind of like objects. And really once you get a few kind of basic things, you know, them to understand like, you know, this can't be super thin because of like the manufacturing and stuff like that. Like they really dig it and really take to it really well. So it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Your shirt, will that be available sometime?
I don't know. I mean,
Not your shirt right now, but
$300.
put it up on eBay. Worn by Ted.
Yeah, you have several shirts we've seen throughout this convention. You had the
Yeah,
Cobra Commander one yesterday.
I had the kind of like the Rivet Wars one yesterday with the rocket bike leaping out and shooting missiles, and this one. I just made these. This is
a line of shirts.
yeah. Kevin was saying like maybe, you know, because he saw the shirt and he's like, yeah, maybe we should make like some shirts.
I want one.
I would buy
It's
it.
purely selfish.
Yeah. And
So-
then
Did you see the back?
No.
It's like the vert tank, like the.
Sure, my favorite art piece in that.
It's one of mine. I love like those cross section books. So part of the reason, like one of the drawings I did after doing the vert tank is like, you know, like even you can go to like a tank museum and like dudes have cut into the tank and like, you can see like how it works. So I wanted to like, of course I like drew it first and then I'm like, all right, how does all this fit in here? And it doesn't really fit, but it kind of like fits in, you know.
So second one, it's kind of like what she was going on. The comic books, would that be a way to flesh out this universe, this world?
That's my intention with it, to
Okay.
kind of like get more like story driven kind of stuff.
As opposed to just having one comic book just come with the game, like a monthly.
Yeah, that would be
Type.
cool. Like because I did a couple comic strips that are, I think they're still on the website, and like, you know, they were just kind of like for fun. Like the first one, it's like a dude hanging out in the trenches with his buddy, and his buddy just gets like blown away, and he sees his guts hanging out. And people are like, that's hard. Like what's going on there? But I'm like, man, it's war. You know, it's like it reminded me of all those war movies you see where like, you know, like the battle happens, and afterwards there's, you know, like a guy like, you know, with no arm, or like how horrific like war really is. And I kind of wanted to do that in that first comic book. I mean, it's kind of like toned down because like a lot of people, you know, like a lot of gamers have told me like, oh, you know, this would be a cool like gateway game for my kids like to play with and then get them into more strategy stuff. So maybe tone that down depending on like what would happen with the comic. But I grew up like watching this cartoon called Star Blazers. It's Battleship Yamato, and so you guys, some of you might be familiar with it. All right, cool. And like as a kid, like something that clicked with me, something about that story was like, you know, if you remember, like every episode ended with like there are 256 days left, Star Force. Hurry, Star Force. Like, and the Earth was gonna die if these guys didn't get to Iskandar, get the whatever they had to get to bring back to the Earth and like cure
The Cosmo
it.
DNA.
Cosmo DNA, yes. They had to get that, bring that back, and that would like cure the radiation from the Earth. And as a kid, I was like, you know, I was like, you know, you have to stay after school for this thing, and I'd cut out to go see that show because you didn't want to miss an episode of it. And there were people who would like die in that cartoon, and people who like, you know, the one guy got like, I don't know what happened, his legs got cut off. He got mechanical legs, but like, I just remember his legs got chopped off and some hatch had to close, and it was like, whoa, like, you know, and like, and the ship would get messed up by the end of the episode, and it would end with it like smoking and like chugging along. And there's something awesome about that even though it's like a cartoon for kids, it was like, there was real consequences to what was going on. And it gave it like a greater weight. So that's kind of what I'd like to do with Rivet Wars. Like it feels, you know, it's fun and it's a cool game, but that like if the story does continue, there's like a weight to it. So I kind of have a story idea I want to do, but it's a time thing, you know, it's like, you know, my friend Darren, he did the comic book, he's busy with other stuff, and you know, maybe if this takes off, I could like put some more money into that, or we could do something with it. But for now, you know, just trying to get little hints of it out there is what I want to do. Like the second comic is like, that dude was like, I want to make a restaurant. So the second one is like, that guy 20 years later like makes the guy's restaurant, and he's like toasting his like boot that got blown off, and it's just kind of little like sick humor, but kind of like, you know, like kind of like fun.
It's also viable, that can happen.
Yeah, totally. Like you think of that, like, you know, you talk about your dreams, and you know, you're hanging out with people who you maybe never meet, but you're thrown together because of this like horrible situation. Then years later, like that's what you remember. And a little bit of like the beginning of Rambo, you know, when he's like trying to meet up with all his friends, and they're all like gone and stuff. And, you know.
Is your goal to be able to do this as your day job eventually?
Yeah, I mean, it would be awesome. It would be pretty cool. I mean, if I could focus on just this, that would be really, really fantastic. But I really do like my day job too. Like the guys I'm working with are guys who I've worked with for like, you know, 15 years, and like really smart guys, really respect them. So that's really cool too. I mean, the thing about this is like, it really feels like my baby. Like I really got to do what I want to do, and stuff that I just like love, I'm just like passionate about. It's got all the cool like stuff, you know, talk about Star Blazers. I also love like Hayao Miyazaki, like Ghibli Studio, like all their stuff, like House Moving Castle, you know, it's like a big steampunk fortress kind of thing, you know, just that guy's like amazing. And like all the other influences I have, you know, Japanese animation for like the spider tanks and stuff, and like old school like Duke Graham and things like that. And you know, this feels like these are all the things like I love. So I have this extra passion for this. So yeah, it'd be awesome. I mean, if this like takes off and goes crazy. You know, I'd love to, because the more time I could put into it, the more we could do. So it'd be great. So is that about it? Yeah, time's probably up.
I have no idea what time it is.
Yeah, it's been over an hour. All right, good time.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you want to swing up and see any of this stuff. Cosmo DNA.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I'm a big Star Blazers fan. They're doing that Robotech thing now, and if it was Star Blazers,
Get
I'd
out
have
of
been
Yeah.
in trouble.
He sent me, when we had the base prototypes for the new bases, which is this. He sent me one of these. It was just a little packing envelope, a little piece of paper, another piece of paper in there. Every piece of paper had a little sketch on it. From the outside of the envelope, a little note that was like, here's the base sample thing. And then there's another piece of paper in the thing that says, I'm the base sample.
photo shoot that could be the tent says really interesting, but I'm afraid he's gonna do it like indicate the grab the wall and plants.
Cool, man.
We've already got it. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for the support.
Yeah,
So is that really your last name, or did you have it changed?
Yeah, it's really Teranova. Like it's weird to me because like that's always been my name. So you know, it's
That's a cool name.
I know, like Kevin didn't believe when
I thought it was a screen name when my boss told me. Because he always, I thought his name was Tom for like a month. For no reason, I just decided it was Tom. And then Dave always calls people by their last name, so he's like Teranova. So I just assumed it was a screen name because one of the artists that I direct now, his screen name is Little Druid, and we always call him Drew. I don't even know his name; he's a Russian guy, right? His name is like Nikolai or something like that, right? So I know him as Druid, like that's his name. So when he said Teranova, I just assumed it was a screen name.